In Thailand, two young brothers enter a local internet cafe. They take their seats and then begin playing their favourite games. One boy was 13 and the other just 8. They were playing games just like they usually did until one boy felt a tap on his shoulder. Standing there beside them was a similar aged child, a stranger to the boys, but a friendly one at that. They strike up a conversation, and according to the unnamed child, he told them he had a friend that lived close by who has an amazing computer, a computer that they could play any game on they wished. But the boy said he didn't want to go alone and asked the boys if they would go with him. It was an offer the boys just couldn't refuse. So they agreed to go with the young boy, following him to a nearby apartment, then up 7 flights of stairs, and then finally into a dark room. And waiting for them inside that room was definitely not a supercharged computer, or wasn't a friend of the boy. Instead, it was a monster, a deprived soul that years down the line would go on to become one of the worst predators ever to walk this world, and his name was Mr. Swirl. In 2004, German police entered a long-forgotten storage unit, and after going through the storage unit, they found a hard drive, and once plugged into the computer, the device revealed hundreds of images, some showing various locations, some showing delicious meals, and then CP. The images showed scenes of deprived abuse being done to individuals who were clearly minor, with this abuse being far worse than you could ever imagine. And it wasn't just one child either, as across the hard drive seemed to be evidence of multiple separate incidents of abuse, including images of 3 young boys taken in a dark apartment building. Typically, in cases involving CP, those taking the photographs and performing the actual abuse would almost always go out of their way to ensure that they are not shown on camera. That way, if authorities should stumble upon it, they would essentially be unidentifiable. However, the photos found on this hard drive were different. The man behind these images had instead gone out of his way to ensure he was featured within them, shamelessly inserting himself into every single picture, even posing for them before, during and after. He had changed the lives of these innocent children forever. The only thing that was hiding his identity was the effect of a swirl that hid the man's face into a distorted pixel mess, making him completely unrecognisable and leaving his face to look like this. Tracking this man down came priority number 1 for law enforcement for the area, and with the swirl being the only thing standing in the way of investigators getting to see this man's face, most would assume that identifying him would be a walk in the park. However, this was far from the case. As the images began to be dissected, it quickly became apparent that deciphering the sensor was going to be far more difficult than initially thought, and potentially even impossible, as there wasn't any known way how to unscramble the pixels. The German police enlisted the help of an agency known as Interpol, an international crime-stopping organisation with a special unit dedicated on resolving crimes against children. Interpol used clues in the pictures to track down where exactly they were taken, which in turn could tell them where this man was from and where the abuse was actually taking place. But this too unearthed a problem. The first batch of images was discovered to have come from Cambodia, but then the next showed evidence that the man was in Vietnam, and then in Thailand, and then potentially even South Korea as well. The man was seemingly travelling from country to country, committing his crimes and then fleeing, thus never staying long enough for law enforcement to catch up with him, making it completely unclear to investigators where he was actually from. Mr. Swirl could potentially be anywhere, a moving target so to speak, and an active one as well. Investigators made a disturbing discovery. Mr. Swirl's photographs were on lots of online forums, with all of them featuring that disturbed, swirling face. These images were shared across the web, seemingly straight from the man himself. They were also sent out to other predator groups that were filled with sick individuals just like Mr. Swirl. Within these groups, it was a badge of honour to show your face within the content that you made, thus leading to the sender becoming well respected among his peers, in turn granting him access to all the CP he could ever want. However, for the first time ever, Mr. Swirl had made a massive mistake. Within these postings on the forums, Mr. Swirl had forgotten to hide his IP address, in turn revealing the general area where they had been sent, with a location being Vancouver, Canada. Detectives believed that Mr. Swirl was most likely a sex tourist, someone who travelled to countries that have loose laws around their age of consent in order to be able to abuse children without any repercussions, with Mr. Swirl clearly doing the same thing, visiting multiple countries in Asia, making his material, coming home and then sharing it with his friends. As authorities were working hard on pinning down Mr. Swirl's location, some members of the team held on to hope that the images themselves could still be unscrambled. One member of the team would actually recognise the Swirl as having come from a fairly standard editing program, which revealed something. The swirl effect wasn't like a typical sensor or blur. Those effects completely mask or even remove the pixels from the actual photograph, making them nearly impossible to decipher. But this effect did neither of those things, and instead it simply rearranged the pixels on the man's face into a swirling pattern, meaning that this image still contained all of its original pixels, and Mr. Swirl's face was somewhere in this picture. They just had to piece it together. One investigator put one of the images into the very same editing software, then clicked the very same swirl effect and simply reversed it, which in turn led to this. Finally, Mr. Swirl's face was revealed with a single click, a whole 3 years later, confirming not only what the man looked like, but also that it was only truly just one man behind the swirl, and now all they had to do was find him. Interpol first started their search by sending this man's image to every single police station the network had access to, asking anyone across the world if they had a criminal in their database who might match this photo, but this attempt would fall flat, indicating that whoever this man was, he likely had no prior criminal record. It turned out that Christopher Neal was actually working as a children's English teacher, a job he held in each of the countries he was discovered to have abused young boys in, making it likely he used this position of power to lure in children from his classes to eventually abuse them and share these photos online. Along with this, it was also revealed that he had used his relationships with young boys to help lure in other children for him to assault. As looking back on the story that started this video, he had recruited a clueless child he knew to lure those two brothers back to his apartment. Having certainly seen his face all over the news, Christopher made the decision to flee the country, being spotted in this image captured at the airport in Thailand. as he had flown to the country, likely in an attempt to find refuge. Throughout the following days and weeks, his photo would show up again and again all around Thailand, indicating that he was somewhere in Thailand hiding out. And having him cornered in the region, it wouldn't take long for police to knock on the door of an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, in which Christopher Neal happened to be hiding, bringing this multi-year search for Mr. Swirl to an end. Following his arrest by Thai police, he was charged for the assault on the 3 young boys from the internet cafe, as it was the only crime they could prove that had taken place in their country, and with it carried a prison sentence of 5 years. The sentence was light, but the plan was to have Christopher turned over to the Canadian authorities after he did his time in Thailand, where they would also prosecute him all over again, with the hope being that they could do the same thing with countries like Cambodia and Vietnam, and essentially forcing him to live out his life in prison. However, when the sentence was completed in 2012 and Christopher was deported back to Canada, the shocking decision was made to allow Christopher Neal to walk free. When Christopher was detained in Canada, authorities let him walk under the condition that he would never own a device that connected to the internet, as well as the agreement that he would also stay away from parks, schools, and also register as a sex offender. Not even a full year later, in 2013, it would be uncovered that Christopher had somehow managed to purchase a computer and also connected to the internet, a clear violation of his conditions. Although he claims it was just for writing a book about his life experiences, when investigators seized the device, they would unsurprisingly find even more CP, 25 images to be exact, including 2 with his signature swirling face. As it turns out, Christopher had been using the device to contact his fellow disturbed friends, where he would even message one of these friends right after his release saying, "The Swirl liveth still," proving that he was remorseless about his crimes and took pride in his new nickname. And somehow the discovery got even worse from there on, as it was revealed that a friend of his had shown him how to access the deep web and how to share these photographs in an untraceable way, thus allowing him to continue being active in these predatory groups, no matter what restrictions were placed on him. After Canadian police made this discovery, Christopher would yet again be arrested, and this time they had the chance to really send a message and put him away forever. However, the judge only sentenced Christopher to 5.5 years, and with time served, meaning that he would only serve a little over 14 months. The prosecution praised the sentence as a win, and Christopher vowed to change his ways. However, I believe they made a massive mistake, because this man may never change. Now, as of 2016, Mr. Swirl, the man responsible for dozens and dozens of extreme crimes against children, is a free man. Thanks everybody that listened to that. Hopefully it'll sound better next time I do one, once I get a proper microphone, etc, etc. But yeah, hope you all have a lovely week. Take care.